A tariff is a tax on imported goods, and it's one of the most powerful tools in a government's economic arsenal. By placing a fee on products that cross borders, countries can influence what gets bought and sold within their markets. Tariffs have been used by governments for centuries to shape economies and international relationships, dating back to the earliest days of global commerce. They're not just about money, they're about power, strategy, and national priorities. Imagine a foreign-made television arriving in the US. Before it hits store shelves, a tariff is added, raising its price. This extra cost can make imported goods less attractive compared to those made at home. The main goals? Protect domestic industries by making local goods more competitive, and encourage consumers to buy products made by their neighbors, supporting local jobs and businesses. Tariffs also generate revenue for the government, providing funds that can be used for public services, infrastructure, or even to pay down national debt. But tariffs aren't just about economics. They can serve as leverage in foreign policy, pressuring other countries to change their behavior without direct conflict. They're a diplomatic tool as much as a financial one, but tariffs are controversial. While they can shield local jobs and industries, they often lead to higher prices for consumers, making everyday goods more expensive and sometimes harder to find. Families on tight budgets feel the pinch as everyday items become more expensive. For many, even a small increase in prices can mean tough choices at the grocery store or when shopping for essentials. Countries hit by tariffs usually retaliate, sparking trade wars that hurt both sides. These disputes can escalate quickly, disrupting global supply chains and creating uncertainty for businesses and workers alike. Leaders must balance the benefits, like job protection and foreign influence, against risks like higher consumer costs and economic fallout. Every decision on tariffs involves weighing complex trade-offs that affect millions. The debate over tariffs is long-standing, but President Trump's recent actions have reignited it, setting the stage for a major legal and political showdown. His policies have brought tariffs back into the national spotlight, forcing lawmakers and citizens to reconsider their impact. The question remains, do tariffs help or harm the nation's economy? The answer isn't just about numbers. It's about values, priorities, and the future direction of the country. As we'll see, the answer is anything but simple. The story of tariffs is a story of winners and losers, and the stakes couldn't be higher. President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, announced in April 2025, marked a dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy. Unlike previous targeted tariffs, these duties applied globally, aiming to reduce trade deficits and push other countries to buy more American goods. In February, new tariffs targeted China, Mexico, and Canada, justified as tools to fight the flow of fentanyl and other illicit drugs. For the first time, Trump invoked the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to impose tariffs on such a massive scale. IEEPA was traditionally used for targeted sanctions, not broad tariffs. The administration argues that trade deficits and drug trafficking are national emergencies, justifying this unprecedented use of IEEPA. Critics say this stretches presidential power far beyond its intended limits. The legal battle over this interpretation has now reached the Supreme Court. The core legal question at the heart of this case is both simple and profound. Who truly holds the authority to set tariffs that impact the entire nation? Congress, as the legislative branch, or the president, as the executive? The Constitution clearly gives Congress the power to tax and regulate foreign commerce, a responsibility rooted in the nation's founding principles. Challengers argue that President Trump bypassed Congress by invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, to impose sweeping tariffs without direct, explicit approval from lawmakers. The Trump administration, on the other hand, claims that IEEPA grants the president broad authority to act swiftly in emergencies that threaten national security or the economy, even if that means acting alone. Opponents counter that IEEPA was designed for targeted sanctions against specific threats, not as a tool for rewriting the entire U.S. tariff code or reshaping trade policy on a massive scale. The major questions doctrine is central to this legal battle. For issues of vast economic and political impact, the doctrine holds that only clear and unmistakable congressional authorization is sufficient to justify executive action. So far, lower courts have sided with the challengers, ruling that IEEPA does not give the president a blank check to override Congress's constitutional role. The Federal Circuit Court specifically found that President Trump overstepped his authority by using IEPA in this way, setting the stage for a historic showdown. Now the Supreme Court will decide the case, setting a precedent that could redefine the balance of power between Congress and the President for generations to come. The stakes are enormous: the future of American trade policy, the limits of executive authority, and the very structure of U.S. government are all on the line. The outcome of this case will shape how the United States is governed for decades, influencing not just trade, but the separation of powers itself. The opposition to Trump's tariffs is a diverse coalition. Small businesses, toy companies, and a dozen states have come together, united by a shared concern for their economic futures and the well-being of their communities. For importers like VOS Selections, these tariffs threaten their very survival by making key products unaffordable, squeezing already thin profit margins, and forcing them to reconsider what goods they can even offer to customers. Toy companies, heavily reliant on overseas components and manufacturing, now face sharply higher costs for the parts and materials they need to stay in business. These businesses are confronted with tough choices: either absorb the mounting losses themselves, or raise prices on their products and risk losing loyal customers who may not be able to afford the increases. These businesses argue that the IEEPA tariffs have created chaos and uncertainty, making it nearly impossible to plan for the future, invest in growth, or even keep their doors open. 12 states, stretching from New York to Arizona, have joined the lawsuit, claiming the tariffs are hurting local economies, stifling job creation, and undermining the stability of entire industries. They argue that these tariffs raise prices for families on everyday goods, from groceries to household essentials, making it harder for people to make ends meet. The coalition contends that the duties act as a regressive tax, hitting lower-income households the hardest and widening the gap between rich and poor. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries have also damaged state industries, leading to layoffs, shuttered factories, and lost livelihoods for countless workers. At the heart of the coalition's argument is a fundamental principle. Only Congress has the constitutional authority to levy tariffs, and the president's use of IEPA, they say, violates the Constitution's separation of powers and undermines the checks and balances that protect American democracy. Now their case has propelled this critical issue all the way to the Supreme Court, where the future of U.S. trade policy and the livelihoods of millions hangs in the balance. The financial stakes are enormous. Hundreds of billions of dollars collected in tariffs hang in the balance. As of August 2025, the government had collected $475 billion in new duties, with $210 billion from the contested IEEPA tariffs. Supporters say this revenue helps reduce the national deficit, with projections of up to $4 trillion in savings over a decade. But if the Supreme Court rules the tariffs unlawful, the government could be forced to refund up to $1 trillion. Such a payout would erase deficit gains and create a fiscal crisis. Businesses hope for refunds, while the government fears a budgetary shock. The uncertainty is already affecting companies and federal finances. This case is more than a legal fight, it's a high-stakes gamble for the nation's economic stability. Tariffs have triggered real-world consequences: rising prices and job losses. Costs are passed from importers to consumers, making everything from appliances to groceries more expensive. Sectors like construction and manufacturing meant to benefit have instead lost tens of thousands of jobs due to higher material costs. Companies face tough choices: absorb costs, raise prices, or cut jobs. Supporters argue these pains are temporary, claiming tariffs will eventually bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Critics see only higher prices and lost jobs, questioning whether the long-term benefits will ever materialize. The economic debate remains unresolved as the nation waits for the court's decision. As the Supreme Court prepares to hear arguments, the nation braces for a decision with sweeping consequences. If the court sides with Trump, presidential power over trade will expand dramatically, setting a precedent for future administrations. Tariffs would remain, deficit reduction would continue, but so would higher prices and business uncertainty. If the court rules against the administration, tariffs end, businesses may get refunds, and the government faces a fiscal crisis. The decision will define the limits of presidential power and the future of American trade policy. It will affect prices, jobs, and the structure of government itself. For Americans, the outcome will be felt in their wallets and workplaces. The country's economic and constitutional future now hangs in the balance.